Tech News Weekly is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
Starting Tech News Weekly in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody, to another Tech News Weekly. I'm your host, Andrew Zarian. This is a show where myself and two of my guests run down everything that happened in technology this week. I am joined by Erik Lanigan. How you doing, Erik?
I'm good. How are you, Andrew?
Doing great. I know you have a new gadget, a new toy, which we're going to get into. And I'm joined by Sunkast as well, which broke his latest gadget and latest toy. How you doing, Sunkast?
I didn't break it. The software broke it.
The software broke it. It's always the software.
It's not my fault.
I do want to let everybody know before we get into the stories that you could catch any one of our shows here at the GFQ Network at gfqnetwork.com. Also, you can watch live on our live streaming site, gfqlive.tv. We have a great chat room there, an IRC chat room. Just feel free to go in and chat with us while we are doing the show. The big story this week, which we're going to dive head first, and I didn't even know that Erik got an iPad, and it is the new iPad announcement. I was going to call it the iPad 3. The new iPad was released today. Stores have been flooded by people. Estimates say that they have sold almost they are estimated to sell everything that they have in stock in every store. Walmart opened up early.
They opened up at midnight.
Yeah.
8 hours before the Apple stores started selling the iPad.
People at the Fifth Avenue Apple flagship store were waiting in the cold and the rain just to get the iPad. Erik, you got your hands on an iPad.
And to think all I had to do is click one click buy.
I know. Isn't that the fun part?
I don't really get that, because don't people know at the time of the announcement, don't they at that point know whether they will be, can't you envision yourself waiting in line in the cold rain 2 weeks from now and say, maybe I'll get to that website right now and click buy before I have to stand in line?
I'll tell you what it is. A lot of people are under the impression that if they go online and get it early, they'll get it before someone else will. I think that is what drives people to wait in line. I don't think they want to wait till 3 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon when UPS or FedEx, whatever, stops by, whatever the delivery time is. I think many people want it to be the first to have it, so they go and wait online. It's a sickness.
Right. Why wait all the way till the afternoon when you can stay up all night with strangers?
Yeah. Because that's a nice thing to do, especially here in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Come
Did
on,
you see? The Office recently parodied that. I guess you probably saw that.
Yeah,
they had the triangle thing, and they were trying to make people camp out there.
Have you ever been excited? Like, and I'll ask both of you, because this is I always find that interesting. Have you ever thought about doing that?
No.
How about you, Sunkast?
I'm not the kind of person to wait, especially if it's outside or even in a mall. I'm not going to camp out for. There may not be anything that will cause me to camp out in front of a building or store to obtain.
Yeah, what would make me camp outside a store to wait for hours? Yeah, nothing.
A chance to win $1 million?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. If it's a chance to win $1 million, possibly. But other than that, that's about it. So, what do you think of it so far?
Well, I was hoping I'd have a more thorough review for you, but it did come just quickly before the show. I booted it up. I started playing around with it. As I was saying before the show, this is my first iPad. I've personally owned no tablets prior to this one, and I may not actually keep this one past the 14 or 15 day period that they let you try it out.
Very interesting. Why?
Well, it's an experiment for me. I said back when the first one came out, and then when we had the first, basically when the iPhone 4 first came out, I said, if this Retina display gets into the iPad, I will consider getting an iPad, because I was just so blown away by the Retina display. Whereas on the old iPad 1 and 2, I could see the pixels pretty clearly, and it looked to me like an more jagged display than reading on my little 11.6-inch MacBook Air. But in the back of my mind, all this time, I've been thinking that, for a power user like me, who's always been a keyboard shortcut guy, always been as soon as I get a program or a new app, I go into the preferences and see what I can change and customize and what I can make this thing do for me, to the best of its uses. And then I go to, any iOS application, even the equivalent ones from Apple, like their iLife or their iWork or Safari or Mail equivalents, already from the get-go, maybe 40 to 60% functionality in the iOS version. And the rest, they leave it to the Mac version. They leave it to the keyboard and the mouse and the full operating system that has a file system and all this stuff. So I'm getting a little bit perturbed by, Tim Cook and these guys claiming that we are clearly in a post-PC era when even Apple's own software is, I would say by intention, not by lack of development time. I think this is a ideologically intended design that they only provide a small portion of the core functions of so-called PC software, Mac or Windows.
Very interesting.
So what do you guys think?
I've always it's interesting you bring that up because What the Tech this week with Paul Thurrott was pretty much based on this idea that we are in a post-PC time. I mean, or we're approaching this post-PC way of computing and the way that we function as a society when it comes to technology. But I don't think we're there yet, and I think we are headed that way. I think the PC, the standard operating system that we know of today, will not be what we have in 10 years. If you go back 10 years ago, it was pretty much still the same. You had OS 10 that had come out, and you had Windows XP that was out. Or getting ready to launch Vista, actually. Wow, that's crazy to think about that. We're almost there at this point. But we were still computing the same way. I mean, Windows still kind of looks like Windows. The Mac OS 10 still kind of feels like Mac OS 10. It's evolved, and the UI is different. But I think this leap that we're talking about with Windows 8 and the iOS, it's a big jump, and I think it's not going to be this smooth transition that people are expecting. What we have come down to at this point is most computer users are average computer users. They're not the sophisticated person that uses a computer like most of our viewers do, or yourself, Erik, or Sunkast, or myself. We're power users in the sense. Most people are not power users. They don't need to see, the file management of the computer. They don't need to have access to system files. This is the future of the technology. This is where we're headed, where you're not going to have any of that. And the enthusiasts...
I think it goes further than that, though.
It does go further than that. Yeah, no, you're right. It does go further than that. But I think the point is that most people don't care about those stuff, and it confuses them, so they have to dumb it down in a way to the simplistic UI where it's this one-touch, one-click type environment. And I think that's where we're headed.
I agree. I think more so than a post-PC era, we've entered a post-geek era of computing, personal computing, and especially a post-geek era for the internet. Most people on the internet now are not geeks. They're not power users. They're not using the computer in order to make money like as a graphic designer or a video editor. They're there because they're using Facebook. They're there because they want to read their newspaper or to use Skype or to make a phone call or to video chat. As the internet has grown, or to watch a movie, as the internet has grown to consume all media habits and all media consumption and communication between people and broadcasting, it becomes a thing that everyone needs access to, even people who don't want to repair it themselves or manage it themselves.
I mean, I've had this discussion with Sunkast a lot, prepping for shows, and I've said, what does the average computer user do? And why are they happy with an iPad? Well, the reason why they're happy with an iPad
I always find that strange, too.
Yeah, I find it very strange, too, until I got an iPad and until I started doing this and I realized that we are not the average computer user. Most people go on, they check an email, they go on Facebook, maybe they play a little Farmville, they go on YouTube, and then they stare at cat pictures for 45 minutes. That is an average computer user.
And you're the one that's always staring at the cat pictures.
I am the one. But
you can't exclude yourself from that.
But I mean, that's where we're headed. Sunkast, do you kind of see the vision where these type of devices like the iPad and Windows 8 are headed?
Part of it too is that we're still in the new era of these touch-enabled devices, and more specifically tablets in general. And because it's still kind of like a first generation, we still haven't figured everything quite out yet, and we're still kind of limited in terms of what we can do with these devices.
But is there a middle
touch-enabled device?
Is there a middle where they'll keep the enthusiast and the power user happy, and they'll also satisfy the average computer user?
I'll give you a good example of this is that we've actually started seeing Photoshop come out for the iPad, and now we're going to see a special version of Microsoft Office for Windows 8 for touch-enabled devices. Now, didn't happen before because I think part of it was that these devices were so new that nobody really wanted to take the time to develop this software for a device that nobody knew if it was going to be something that was going to stick around for a while, people were going to keep buying, or if it was just a fad that was going to phase out.
Well, also the hardware hadn't caught up to what we kind of wanted, right? The touch screens were not.
Well, that is part
great.
of it. What I was saying is you're still limited in terms of what you can do because of the hardware that you have, and it being a touch-enabled device. So it doesn't work necessarily the same way. You have to develop these more sophisticated apps from the ground up to work on these touch-enabled devices in a completely different way than we're used to. So in that terms, you're not going to see the same type of power users wanting to use these devices because it lacks those certain things. And that's just inherent to it being such a newer device.
So what do you like, Eric, and what don't you like?
Well, I guess what I like is the screen.
Is it that mind-blowing, the Retina display? I've not experienced the new iPad, so I can't kind of understand what it would look like.
Surely you've tried an iPhone 4 or 4S.
I have, yeah, and it looks great. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's basically that. It's the brightness is not quite as even, and it's the larger screen. You notice a lot more reflections off of the windows and the light fixtures than you would do on the little iPhone, or than you do on a non-reflective black and white Kindle. So I don't know. That's going to be my primary review. Is this better than a black and white Kindle for reading text? Is it better on the eyes? Does it make reading news and other periodical things faster, easier, more fun? That's my focus of using the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other question?
What don't you like?
What don't I like? Personally, I don't like feeling lost in the operating system.
And that's how you feel.
What?
And that's how you feel?
Well, yeah, because I've never been that big of an iOS user. But so for me, it's going to be a little adventure for the next 2 weeks to see before I hit the return period, and we have to make the decision whether or not it's simply because I'm not accustomed to it, or because you really, even the most efficient user of an iPad still cannot use the computer as efficiently as you could use, say, a MacBook Air. That's going to be what I'm going to see. Because I think for me, as well as for most people who use keyboard shortcuts and who try to be masters of efficiency and speed with their computers, need things like keyboard shortcuts, fast copy and paste, fast alt tabbing. I find I'm doing so many button taps and scrolling and doing all this. I mean, just the web browsing alone, a few minutes into that, and all I'm doing is just zooming and zooming. I'm resizing every page I look at. I'm resizing like 4 or 5 times just to get to what feels like a normal size.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that'll die down as the more I use it, but so far that kind of feels like a little bit of an inefficiency.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing actually, and I'm constantly having to resize the picture. Well, for me, this device here is a reason for me not to bring my laptop to my bed. I keep this on the nightstand when let's say I'm watching TV or something comes to mind. I could check my email. I could send a tweet out. I could look at a couple YouTube videos, and I use it as a gaming device. And I play games on here. I read the news. I mean, I'm not writing long emails. I read my emails. I'll do a quick response. I don't do AIM on here. I don't chat on here. It's a very simple device for me, and it's a easy thing to take to the bed. Or to my couch. It's this in between machine for me. I don't consider this a laptop replacement like many people do.
Right, and I think that's important. I think tablets, as well as even phones, and tablets are being called, depending on who you ask, like the third or the fourth screen, and then the cell phone is also called the third or the fourth. The tablet is, or rather, the laptop is one, and the TV is the primary screen, if that's what the marketing people are talking about in that context. So I think the idea that the tablet is a replacement. That by owning a tablet, you wouldn't need to own a Mac or Windows PC or a Linux PC with a keyboard, mouse, and regular file system and USB support and so forth. I don't think that's I don't think that's the case. I mean, Apple's getting in trouble by advertising Siri and perhaps with false accuracy in the commercials. I'm not sure how you can really say we're in a post-PC era, meaning by implication post-Mac, because they call those Macs PCs in that context, to where your iPhoto app cannot import photos from your digital camera and cannot do, I don't think it can do raw processing. I don't think it can do a fraction of what the desktop client can do. Certainly there's no Aperture equivalent. Photoshop is a joke. The new Photoshop app that everyone got excited about. You can't do professional work in that. It's only for play and for amusement.
And I think this is what it's going to be. I think these devices are going to be for play and for amusement for some time until we come up with a in-between. And honestly, I think the in-between is this dockable device that it caters to both as a laptop and tablet. I think that might be the device that takes us into the next couple of years. Sunkast, do you want to go into another story? Because we're probably gonna end up talking about this.
Because I don't have the notes.
Yeah, you crashed, right?
Yeah.
The FCC to Verizon Wireless. You need more spectrum. Prove it by March 22nd. They've been screaming that they need more spectrum.
Yes,
Actually,
let's talk more about the spectrum stuff.
Yeah.
This is really fascinating to me.
Here's one thing. Didn't Verizon say they have all the spectrum that they need? And
At
they're
one
okay.
Point, I believe they did.
And then now they turned around and said we need more spectrum.
I don't know. See, I find this fascinating because they have been on a buying streak trying to buy up as much spectrum as they can in certain deals. Wherever they can get it, they're going to try and buy the spectrum that's up for auction or whatever is for sale. And so now I'm finding it fascinating that the FCC is actually telling Verizon, well, if you need more spectrum, then you need to prove it. So this kind of goes into our theory where what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, do these carriers really need more spectrum? How do we know they need more spectrum?
I guess how are they going to prove it? I mean, there's no audit. They can't audit them for more spectrum.
No, this goes back to what we're talking about, where how do you prove this stuff? A lot of this stuff, it takes surveys and analysis to actually determine what the network load and capacity is. It's a lot of technical BS kind of crap. And to really know what's going on, you have to do a long-term study up to 6 months in order to know what's really happening with the network.
Yeah, and there's really no way to tell that currently. Eric, do you think that they should be allowed more spectrum? What do you
No,
think?
not at all. As you were talking, Sunkast, I was trying to call up an article that I found. I'm sure listeners will find this, or I will by the end of the show. But there is this week, T-Mobile is the one to watch with this, because they announced there's a great graphic. Actually, Andrew, if one of you guys can find it, there's a great graphic about how T-Mobile announced this week that they are re-provisioning. They called it like re-harvesting or something. They had a weird buzzword, reallocating the spectrum that they already own. And they're going to bump down. They're going to get rid of their earliest GSM voice-only, sort of your 1G digital.
Okay.
They're going to get rid of that. And in its place, they're going to move down. They're going to bump down HSPA and HSPA Plus, sort of one frequency block. And then they're going to add LTE on what is currently their HSPA Plus.
Sure.
And their phones are just going to move on down. They're going to retire the spectrum for the services that they no longer need. And I imagine for the users whose phones require that, they'll offer them a deal for a new phone and a new contract, and everyone will be fine. That's what these guys need to do. It's what they all need to do, because you can't just keep buying more spectrum. We're already almost sold out of spectrum.
Yeah,
the real estate's gone.
They need to retire the existing spectrum that nobody's using. Well, AT&T is stating that they're looking to kill off Edge, and they're looking to retire Edge by the end of the year.
Well, and that's the approach. That's what you do. Because when I was reading about this, I had to learn more about this, because LTE is, you see HSDPA versus GSM versus CDMA, and it's hard to figure out, keep them in line about which is a spectrum, which is a block of frequencies. AWS was the other one. They have different terms for PCS. Yeah,
it's kind of, even to somebody like me who's very into all this tech stuff, even all these lingos, and it's a little confusing, quite frankly. It's like everybody has their own term for a certain data network, and it's like, well, what the heck is what?
Well, let me ask you. I may be wrong, but doesn't T-Mobile use the 1900 megahertz spectrum for 3G?
The number, I have no idea.
Off the top of my head, I have to look it up.
I think that's what it is. I think it's the 1900 megahertz spectrum that they're using.
That might actually be.
Why do you ask, though?
Edge?
I think it is. I'm not too sure, but they're saying actually yes, they are. AT&T iPads support AT&T LTE on 2100 megahertz. So there was actually an weird article saying that
Yeah, 1900 I believe is Edge. 2G.
Yeah, they were saying how the Verizon iPad could possibly work on T-Mobile service in a weird way because of the spectrum that's crossing over, which is bizarre. I think it was PC Mag that put it out earlier. I'm trying to.
I think I saw that one too recently.
Yeah, so,
I don't know, but so bottom line about this story is that I don't like that they said that Verizon has to prove why they need more spectrum, because you can't prove it. All you can do is explain how they really almost certainly do not need it, and if you ask anyone besides Verizon, like any of their competitors, they will very articulately tell you why they do not need the spectrum.
Well, T-Mobile is one of the main people. Sprint and T-Mobile in a weird way have teamed up in this blitz to kind of block the approval.
Right.
Yeah, but now see, this is funny because it's sort of on the other foot now, where AT&T was like, well, that's not fair. You let Verizon do all this spectrum buying, but you won't let us buy T-Mobile. And now they don't have any room to cry foul or anything, because now the FCC is coming down on Verizon for its spectrum buying spree.
Yeah, this is. I mean, they're grabbing all the spectrum, but they're not grabbing it to kind of.
They're not doing any sort of look at their network and seeing where they can better utilize their spectrum.
Yeah, this was very interesting.
There are things out there you can do to make better use of your spectrum. The problem is it takes so long to analyze what needs to be done and draw up plans that it'll probably take 2 years for anything to be done. I mean, you literally have to do at least a 6-month study.
No, Sunkast, again, I don't know where you read that, but most people, network people will you don't really have to do that kind of like analyzing the actual spectrum usage. You can go pretty much by just the reports of customers. You can say what kind of speeds people normally get, how many calls are dropped, how many, the latency. There's all kinds of tests like that. And what it comes down to is, customer frustration. If everyone says, oh, my phone is so slow, even in the best areas with 4 bars, it never gets any reception, well, then you have to make changes. And yes, there is a lot they can do. They can sunset or send it off into the sunset, the older frequencies that we don't need to use anymore, and then bring the newer technologies down to those now freed up blocks of spectrum. I think ultimately we're going to have to get into a LAN sharing arrangement like we have with Wi-Fi, where it's okay, I'm oversimplifying the Wi-Fi thing. But yeah, where I think ultimately we can't provision just spectrum to different people. We're going to have to share that and have some way of like hopping on to a cloud of spectrum where we all have encrypted and protected and non-interfering channels, yet we don't have a situation where one company owns all the air. Sorry, what?
That's one of the things I don't understand why carriers aren't doing now, is that T-Mobile has this thing called UMA or UMA. And I've had this on my my BlackBerry that I've had since 2007. I can connect this to any Wi-Fi network and make calls over the Wi-Fi network. It doesn't need to be connected to a cell tower whatsoever to make and receive phone calls and text messages and use data. I can use Wi-Fi wherever it's available. I don't understand why more carriers and more phones don't support this.
By the way, I do want to say that this the spectrum that Verizon is seeking, I guess the FCC is kind of trying to block in a way, was the spectrum that they purchased from Spectrum Co., which was a joint venture between Comcast, Time Warner, and Bright House. They bought it for $3.6 billion.
Yeah, this is catastrophic. And if you want to, the person that I've been watching who really gets into this is Stacy H something at GigaOhm. She's always writing about bandwidth and about broadband in greater depth than most reporters that I've seen. And she was getting into how this is really a laying down of arms. It's saying this wireless spectrum that was owned by the cable companies that was bought a few years ago was the last big hope that we might get a new competitor, even though it would be the cable companies who we all love them, right?
But they would have it all together, so they wouldn't try to kill each other over it because they all share it.
And we'd have a competitor for Verizon, for AT&T, and then Verizon was also competing on Fios, which competed with them on cable television and broadband. So, but instead, what happened is they're going to sell off their spectrum to Verizon, and in exchange, Verizon will stop rollout of Fios entirely and will start marketing Comcast cable to Verizon wireless customers, and Comcast will market Verizon wireless to cable customers. They're saying AT&T and Verizon get wireless, Comcast, Time Warner, and Bright House, and the other guys get wired. It's the laying down of arms. It's the complete. It's going from a duopoly of just DSL and cable or wireless to complete monopoly.
Yeah. In every way, in every side of the business, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's not just one side now. Actually, this leads into something that I wanted to go into, and that's Intel developing an online TV service. Is this the answer, guys? Do you think the companies like Intel and all these online TV services that are starting to come up now, and the Wall Street Journal is reporting every week possibly that there's a new company that wants
That's my point.
Start an online TV service. But I mean, that possibly is the future of this, and that's possibly is the competition. It won't be on the wiring end, but it might be up in the internet where it's online TV companies. I don't know. I don't know if Intel could be the one behind this. Intel has failed at a couple of ideas that they've had. I think they had a set-top box a couple of years ago.
Pretty much any IPTV idea has failed up until this point, I think, other than Verizon Fios.
Yeah, but Verizon's it's not a true. Well, no, AT&T U versus IPTV as well, right?
Yeah, but they already had an existing network and existing coverage. It's not a new product that somebody's starting out with. They had a cable TV business.
Yeah. On Monday, the Wall Street Journal reported that Intel, one of the world's largest makers of microprocessors for computers, is considering offering a TV service to customers, to consumers that would compete with the cable operators, satellite providers, and phone companies. I don't know. I mean, would they be capable of this? I mean, it's a lot of infrastructure, and they're not in the business of television.
No, basically what they're calling is a virtual cable service is, I think, the term that they're using for this.
So what it would be, you would get probably like a set-top box designed by Intel. Actually, That's what it is. Wall Street Journal is saying that they would deliver via an Intel-designed set-top box and would offer virtual cable service. So it would connect you to the cloud. It would go over your Wi-Fi, and you'd be able to watch certain shows. That's what I'm imagining. It
sounds an awful lot like an HTPC to me in a way, where you're going to control this from the actual set-top box. It's not like cable that today. It's going to be something more computer-based.
There are a lot of options now. We've gone over this. Eric, are you a cord cutter? I think you said you don't have cable, right? I mean, you could technically get a box, make your own, little box, with a computer, put a antenna on there. You get all the local channels, you get high-def TV, and you have pretty much everything you want on the internet on there. I think Boxy Box is now offering an antenna for its Boxy Box, so you get local programming. We are there already. So do we need... I don't know if Intel would be the answer.
Well, I don't think we're going to have any kind of answer. We're not going to have any kind of truly competitive internet, television over the internet solution as long as these guys are going to charge us $10 or more per gigabyte, as they want to do even for the home service. We were talking, I think, the last couple of weeks about how Time Warner is instituting a 5 gigabyte cap on their wired cable, where there's not even an issue about maximum. I want to note one thing in this
article that I think really stresses this to be somewhat of a horrible idea. They're saying that consumers would use their broadband connection in order to access this content.
So it goes exactly what Eric
said. This Comcast connection that I have, it's going to eat through the bandwidth that I have for my Comcast internet for TV as well.
Yeah, this is exactly what Eric was saying, where if you are one of those people that have opted into your Time Warner Cable 5 gig cap, because it's an option. Remember, they give you a $5 discount for 5 gigs, and what are you going to do if you have a service like that?
But then you could also argue the point where these data caps that most ISPs have are so large that people never use that. They only use on average maybe 20 gigabytes per month on their home broadband connection, so it doesn't matter whatsoever. But for people like me who use their broadband connection for a lot of stuff and even work between me and the GFQ network, that could spell trouble.
Yeah. No, you're right. I do want to go into some more.
And let me make it clear, I'm all for this. It's just... how are they going to allow the use of this? Because I believe you and Paul were mentioning this on Tuesday, where, well, wouldn't the ISPs get upset with that? You've got this service that you're paying for, and you're using your ISP for the content, but the ISP isn't getting any of the money from the content that you're
Well,
doing.
yeah, because we become this society that bundles everything. Before you would have DSL, and then you would have your cable, and then
They're not getting their cut from it. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. It's not an incentive to be bundled. It's a expectation, and when you don't bundle, they punish you with higher rates. So
Yeah.
it's almost this. I have to get my TV from them because if I didn't, my TV
And everybody
everything
wants
else
a
would be
cut of
up.
it too.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to go into this, but I have to thank our sponsors for a second, and that's Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com. You get 10% off your entire purchase. Hover is a extremely clean and easy-to-use service to buy your domain names. Now, they don't do hosting. They only do domain names, and they do them perfectly well, and they do it better than most people out there because their business is based on not upselling you, not using scare tactics for you to buy private registration and certified registration. They don't do any of that because it's already included in the price. And if you go to gfq.hover.com, you get 10% off your entire purchase. One thing that I really like about them is zero hold time during business hours, where when you call them, somebody will pick up and talk to you. You don't have to sit on hold for 5 minutes or whatever the time may be. There's always someone to help you, and that is why Hover is the best when it comes to domains. gfq.hover.com, you get 10% off your entire purchase, or you could use promo code GFQ upon checkout. Thank you, Hover. A little fast one right there. Let's see. This was interesting, Sunkast, and I'm gonna hand this off to you and Eric for a couple seconds. U.S. ISPs to start monitoring users by July 12th.
Yes.
This is according
I'm actually
to
really
CNET.
interested to hear Eric's point of view on something like this.
Yeah.
Oh, I better read fast.
Yeah, well, they're saying that they're going to start policing people's ISP usage, like companies like Comcast, Time Warner, Verizon, and Cablevision have agreed to policies designed to discourage customers from illegally downloading music, movies, and software. So pretty much they're going to start keeping inventory, I guess, of what you're doing online. So just in case if the RIAA decides to flag you and they want information, there you go. There is there's a log.
This goes further than that, according to what I've read, and this is what's so scary about that is that there's so few details about how this is actually going to work that it's really scary. That's the part that's really unnerving about this is that there's no details as far as how this all is going to work. How are they going to monitor this? What are they monitoring for? What are they looking for? How do they look for that?
Well,
all the details that go along with this. Are there going to be people that get caught up as being innocent in all of this? Because they're saying that this is an automatic system. And so we know from automatic systems, such as YouTube, when they have their content ID system, it has a lot of false positives. So if their system works in any sort of the same way as YouTube's content ID system, there's going to be a lot of people that are falsely identified as pirating or whatever it is that they're accused of downloading.
Yeah. Here's a perfect example of it. Let's say it's going based on a filtering system for certain names that flags you. Let's say the system detects a THDG.RAR as a copy of the Hunger Games, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work? How does it know? How sophisticated is this algorithm that they're using? Or if someone names a copy,
even have a chance to say, "Well, I was wrongly identified with this. You can't do this to me."
Is this something that they're definitely doing? I mean,
that's what it sounds like. I mean, I don't know where this actually started, but it sounds like the RIAA, MPAA, and Hollywood all got together to say, hey, ISPs, can you start policing and following these policies for us so that we can have some sort of copyright enforcement here? And I'm not against copyright enforcement, but there's just no good way to go about doing this because there is so much copyrighted content out there that it's just like the YouTube content ID system is. It's an imperfect world that you can't rely on any sort of automated system to do any IDing.
I'm not happy that our media, purely our media consumption habits and our communication networks have become this dystopian, big brother future of science fiction.
Yeah.
Except we don't have it in general government. It's just in how we try to watch TV and watch movies and talk to people on the video chat that gets ridiculously monitored and recorded every step that we make and everything that we do.
It's kind of like that show Person of Interest.
I'm not too
Which
sure.
one was that? Oh, I've seen that, but I can't.
It's on CBS with the one guy from Lost.
Oh, I haven't seen that then.
It's a pretty good
no, I
show,
haven't seen
but
it.
yeah, basically the guy developed a system of cameras that are all network and can identify threats automatically.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and I don't really like that that this is we're institutionalizing as if this is a thing that we've agreed as a society is a problem when we haven't. The facts and evidence is very flimsy that piracy has actually impacted these guys financially at all, and that people downloading these things are actually result in a lost sale. You can't just assume that. There have always been reasons that people get. I would go as far as to say as long as there's been home media going back to broadsheets and phonograph records, there have been a certain percentage of our media that we always get for free from friends, family, borrowing from free samples from something. There's always been some amount we pay and some that we get for free, and whether we get that borrowed from a friend, off the radio, off the free television, or whether we download that free television an hour later over BitTorrent, which I don't think morally makes any difference.
But let me ask you this: How about this? How about secondhand purchasing of CDs? There's a big
Right.
secondhand market for albums and records. That technically, they're not profiting from you buying a CD off of me, but yet
Right, same.
it's the
right,
same thing.
And same with books. Back when books were like the only home media you had, and books were like a luxury of the wealthy. You of course you loaned your books to your friends when you were done reading. You wouldn't hoard it away on your shelf and say this is mine and no one can see it. But of course that's what we do every time we download something with DRM. We say
You
there's
gotta pay
no one
for
else is going to see
the
this but
use
me.
of this book.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Or let's say
If you want to read it, you have to pay the copyright person for it or whatever.
yeah,
it
but
is, the
I mean,
publisher.
I don't. I guess it's this idea that as long as one person only has in his possession, it's fine. But
It's a caged system that they're making
Yeah.
where if you want access to this content, you have to pony up every single time.
And they've kept the prices just as high. That's why I really hope, and I'm really glad that both the U.S. and the EU are starting to really look into this price fixing of ebooks, where they went from possibly from Apple and Steve Jobs' insistence and collusion, got them to go from the same model that they sell paper books to this agency pricing model where they set the price and then Amazon or the reseller cannot go below that price. So that's why you have on Amazon a paper book that may be 2 megabytes in size costing more than it would cost to tear down 2 trees, print the pulp, print the ink, print the page, have 5 different trucks ship it to you, 5 different inventory systems. It goes through FedEx, UPS, the warehouse, and finally gets to you. And somehow that costs less than emailing you a 2 megabyte file.
I don't know. See, this is my gripe with this. The RIAA and could have kind of fought piracy in a different way, where they could have said, you know what, we're going to make sure that pricing for downloadable music is affordable, where you don't need to pirate the music. And if you are going to pirate the music at that low affordable cost, you were never going to buy it to begin with. So it's not like we lost the sale.
But
They're
just
charging
said
you
is
$1 for a
not right,
song.
because in the RIAA's mind is that they want to charge what they consider to be appropriate, but what everybody else would not consider to be affordable whatsoever. Their definition of affordable is completely different than the average person's definition of affordable.
Well, they don't even care what's affordable. They just care what's been the historic price that they can get.
Yeah, and that's
It's not affordable. It's the highest that they can charge and still make money.
Well, and they're still charging you the same thing. If you buy an album, you're paying $12.99. You're buying a single song off that album, which most albums are 12 to 13, 14, songs. You're still paying $1, so they're making the same by selling you a single and selling you the album. The pricing never came down. CDs have been around for how many years, and the pricing for CD has not gone down since it came out. I mean, it's always been $12, $14, $15, $16, $17.
DVD still costs $20, $25, even though you have Blu-ray out now.
I mean, so really, to go back to the larger picture here, what we've seen because of the vast consolidation of media and communication companies, the fact that we have 5 main book publishers in the world, and especially in the U.S., and 4 record companies, and no matter where you live in this country, about 1 ISP and 1 wireless provider that can give you decent service where you live. That all happened over the last 20 years. And so now, when they decide to do something like crack down on piracy, collude on book pricing, you're talking about 3 phone calls that have to be made, because it's like HarperCollins, Comcast, and Verizon all have to agree on it, and that's it.
And it's not just that media industry either, because we just saw this also with LCD manufacturers where they were found to be guilty of price fixing their LCD displays.
Yeah. It's almost like the same thing, but for the ISPs now to get involved and to kind of track and log and catalog everything that you're doing.
It's not just that it's a copyright issue. It's they're monitoring me now. I don't like that. I don't like them snooping around every single thing that I'm doing. Everything that is transmitted, received over my internet now is going to be looked at. I don't like that whatsoever.
I mean, look, you can't even cross the border now without them seizing and searching your laptop.
Sure.
You could pick any dystopian science fiction movie off of Netflix and just overdub the dialogue with, some kind of political dissident with a copyright violator. And that's what we have now. We're living in that world as far as media goes.
Well, we're in a world where there's no such thing as free use. Free use is out the window.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. You brought up Netflix.
Yeah.
How is this filter going to work with sites like Netflix?
What do you mean?
Well, if it's, some sort of name matching system, how do they know that if I'm watching a Netflix movie that I'm watching it legally?
Oh, I'm sure they'll figure that. I mean, they could do IP matching or Netflix.com domain.
Yeah, they'll probably do that. I think the more critical thing is, and in this article they're trying to say, well, if they're looking for certain keywords to file names. So let's say, let's ignore the piracy thing and let's go to something else like child pornography. Let's say somebody named a file, I don't know, something that kind of alludes to that, and it's really not.
You're going down a dark alley right now.
I am. But I mean, it's almost like the same thing. It could be used for anything else, and what keywords? So naked baby. Let's say, okay, here's one, naked baby boy, right? Somebody sends you a file of their kid in like the bathtub or something, like a relative, and they flag you for that. That's a possibility also.
Yeah, or you download an excessive amount of MP3s or something, but it turns out they're fully legal or that you bought them. I mean, there's all ways that this could go wrong.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is going to be very interesting how this plays out over the next couple months, and we'll see more about this. A couple small stories before we go into our picks of the week. Firefox for Windows 8 running. It's going to be running a single Metro app and the desktop, so it's going to kind of coincide together, right, Sunkast?
They look like they're doing something a little bit different than what you would expect, because what it is now is Internet Explorer actually has two different versions, a Metro version and a desktop version. It sounds like to me they're trying to do a combination of both, where it's one application where you can flip back and forth between Metro and desktop mode and still have the same version of Firefox with everything, the same session that you had open between the two environments.
Which you can't currently, right?
I have no idea.
I read that Microsoft is allowing browsers and browsers only to have a sort of a hybrid Metro and desktop mode where the same, I don't know how they're defining it, whether it's the same exe file or the same set of features. It may be the same, user level permissions or something, but there's some kind of hybrid permissions that exclusively makers of web browsers will get that will allow the Metro system and the desktop version to coexist on the same machine with the same features.
Twitter has bought microblogging website Posterous. This just came out. The acquisition happened this week. Terms of the deal have not yet been public, but Twitter has purchased them. I'm really curious on why they are purchasing them and what they could possibly do with Posterous. Posterous is pretty popular.
Do anything with them.
Posterous has been it's almost like a very simplistic blog, like a Tumblr. So would Twitter kind of be wanting to go into something like this?
I think they want Posterous and they want their team of developers in order to build out their media posting platform some more. I think they don't want TwitPic, they don't want FrogVid, they don't want all that third-party stuff. They want to ultimately have all your video and media posting go through Twitter the same way people go through Tumblr and other services and YouTube. I don't think they necessarily like to be the ones that keep sending you off to external sites. I think long-term they see keeping you on the Twitter domain and hosting your things there will allow them to sell ads alongside it and further monetize and keep it within their little system.
I see this exactly like the Facebook GoWalla issue. When Facebook acquired GoWalla, they were like, all right, we just want your technology and your team. We don't care about your service. We're going to actually get rid of your service.
Yeah, because they have the same thing. I mean, they have a pre-existing service. But Twitter does not have a pre-existing blog service. Correct. So I think Eric might be right, though. They might be trying to grow it some more. This was an interesting story, and I wanted to get both your opinions on this. At South by Southwest, a company called BBH Labs, they did this strange thing where they made local homeless people 4G hotspots. And you would pay them, and they would, on their shirts, they would say, "Hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm a 4G hotspot." And you would give them the money, and you would have 4G access on your mobile device. They came under some heat for this, where they were saying, you're kind of exploiting the homeless population in Austin. And they said, no, we're actually bringing attention to them. They tried this in New York, and it kind of failed. Originally, they had tried like a project very similar to this in New York, and it didn't do well. And this became a big story out of South by Southwest in Austin this week. What do you guys think of this? Is this a little unethical? Is this a little bizarre of a thing? Or are they bringing attention to what's happening in Austin with their large homeless population? I guess I'll go to Eric first on this.
Okay. I don't think it's right.
They call it a charitable experiment.
Yeah, charitable experiment. So let's analyze this. So how much actually goes to the homeless people? They're not actually giving them jobs, and I think that's the mistake a lot of people are making here. They're saying, well, what's wrong with giving jobs to the homeless? What's wrong with helping them get back on their feet? Well, they're not. They make less than minimum wage, much less, because they get like a flat fee, like $20 for the day or something, to walk around with this hotspot, and then they collect money directly from people just by asking, I guess, for donations of whatever amount the people choose. I don't really know how that works. But then they give them the password and they log into the hotspot. But the amount of money that actually goes to the homeless people is so minuscule. And you have to understand that what they're getting in return is they're building a sort of a network of wireless service without having to pay for installation or for permits or for putting them in a physical location. So they're turning homeless people, and I think rather cynically, they're sort of saying, well, we could put these on street corners and posts in the sides of buildings, but that would cost money. So let's instead attach them to homeless people who we'll just treat as always going to be there, which seems, I think, rather cynical and rather inhumane.
It is a little. I mean, so how does it work? Like they go to you and they say, "Oh, please give me a donation, and I'll give you the passcode." I think what they were saying is that it was when they were doing it at South by Southwest, it was whatever money you wanted to give to the homeless person. That's what you were giving them, and they would just give you. You would text a number, and it would give you access to it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little. The idea of it is actually not bad. The actual act of it. You try something like that here in Detroit, I guarantee you. Well, you do that in Detroit. Break out your wallet to pay the guy, you're going to get mugged. You do that in Detroit. Guarantee it. Entire state of Michigan is wired up if you do that in Detroit with the way things are going there right now. But no, I don't necessarily think they should be doing it to homeless people. But I think the concept of having people that are hotspots is an interesting idea. That you could become a hotspot and you could collect money from that. Really, who wants to approach a homeless person, though? Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, that's the thing, though. And the interesting thing that they had was on the website, they had each of the people's stories and how they became homeless, and they were bringing attention to them. But, I mean, could this possibly work in a different way? Not in the way that, he's a homeless person. But let's say they hire people that are in the city area and they're walking around to be a hotspot, and they say, "Listen, how do they know that they're not going to get mugged for their equipment?" Yeah, that's another problem. Yeah, how do they know that the person that they're giving the equipment to isn't going to steal it and keep it for themselves or sell it off to somebody else? Yeah, well, I don't know. See. That's what I don't understand. It's like, who's to say that these people that they're giving, the homeless people, aren't going to take the equipment that they're given and try and sell it off for drugs or alcohol?
Well, I think the bigger issue is. It assumes that the people are just going to be rooted there like a mechanical installation, like a fixture on the side of the corner of the street. If they move around, you have to follow them around for the access. Exactly. Yeah. That's my point. How do you follow them around? I mean, it's a mobile human being, right?
So unless 20 guys following some homeless person around New York City.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna have populations of hipsters with iPads following around a homeless guy. And homeless people are going to become the new Starbucks.
Hey, by the way, want something to eat? That's how cults get started. They start worshiping the magic man with the hotspot. That's what's going to happen. I guess we could go into. Do we have any other stories, or do we go into our picks? What do you got? What do you think, Sunkast?
Depends how much time you want to spend.
We'll see what's left. I don't really have a pick, by the way.
It's all right. Well, you have the iPad.
Yeah.
I go into this. CNN is reported to be purchasing Mashable for around $200 million. A lot of these blogs are...
But this is just a rumor. We don't know for sure if this is true or not.
Yeah. Well, it's been a rumor for a couple days now, they've been saying. And I don't know how I feel about large companies like AOL and CNN and a lot of these larger companies purchasing these blogs. It kind of... To me, I feel like...
It's worrisome, isn't it?
It is.
Because what I worry about is that CNN will buy Mashable because they think it's the hip thing to do. They're hip now, so if they buy Mashable, it'll automatically gain them points or whatever with the internet community. Oh, and then what they'll just end up doing is, like what AOL does, or most companies do, is they neglect Mashable. They let them run on their own, but they don't give them any sort of support, and they just kind of wither away.
Well, we kind of saw that happen with TechCrunch, right? TechCrunch got bought by AOL, and they are, to a lot of people, they are not what they used to be.
Right.
So, this is just another rumor, but they're being reported as it's almost a done deal, but we don't know. But because Pete Cashmore is saying is denying the reports, so we'll see what happens with that. Nokia to launch a Windows 8 tablet later this year. I would be surprised if they didn't, but this might be the flagship Windows 8 tablet to purchase because Nokia and Microsoft have that very good relationship. They are considering giving them... Well, Mike, from what I remember, and maybe you guys could correct me, doesn't Nokia have free reign to do anything to the operating system? They could customize it.
I doubt they have free reign.
I remember reading that they are allowed to customize the operating system. And that was part of the deal, that they could tweak certain things and they could have it, Nokia-ized.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they would they would do something like that, or they would, get first dibs on this and be the flagship.
Well,
Windows 8
Lenovo
tablet.
also is rumored to be coming out with a Windows 8 tablet in October.
Okay, so both of them are going to be coming out with it. I don't know. Very interesting. And the story is that it's going to be a dual-core-based Windows 8 tablet. It's going to be a higher-end one. It's not going to be a lower-end tablet. And this might be the flagship. So, we'll see
by the way, the more of these kind of stories that come out where we're wondering, what is the goal for the iPad? What will tablets become? How will Nokia's partnership with Microsoft play out? And what will Microsoft's goal be to promote Windows 8? I think it's safe enough to say in this race, not that this is a presidential race, but the race for the new future of computing like this, the so-called post-PC era, quote unquote. I think it's anyone's guess. I think us sitting here have as much basis on which to speculate as Tim Cook does. I think these guys do not have a long-term plan that we are just guessing at. Everyone's guessing. Everyone's throwing a lot of stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and there's going to be a lot of tumult. There's going to be a lot of chaos over the next 10 years or so until some kind of people wind up at the other end.
Do you think that sort of strategy is actually a little bit better in the long run because you're able to adapt faster to what's happening versus somebody like Grimm, where they actually draw up a 10-year plan, they stick to that 10-year plan, and because they stuck to that 10-year plan, they weren't able to adapt to what's changed over those 10 years?
Yes and no. Well, look at it this way, right? Look at the last 10 years. Let's look at the last 10 years of mobile computing, right? Let's talk about phones. It took a lot of...
I think you can draw plans and try to speculate up to 5-6 years down the road.
Well, I don't think anybody was speculating what was going to happen with the iPhone. I think that threw everybody off course. If you look at it that way, they were the ones that kind of revolutionized the industry. Mobile phones were not anywhere near what the iPad was when it came out.
I think if you're sticking yourself in a 5 to 6 year box, you still have enough time there to adapt to whatever's changed within those 5-6 years. Where if you stick to it for 10 years, well, then you're really screwed. You could be 2-3 years out behind everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Sunkast. I don't think it's as much about making a plan and then agreeing not to deviate from it at all at any cost. I think it's more of, do these companies actually have people do they have I don't even know if it's that. If I was going to say, do they have futurists? Do they have people who could actually see this stuff? We're in a time of huge conflict. I mean, look at how the patent wars are heating up. We've seen it in mobile. Now Yahoo is claiming that they own all of Facebook's patents to just social networking and like the customization of a page to support its user. I mean, just crazy stuff.
The internet.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Yahoo was doing that my Yahoo thing years ago. So they claim that they own the patent. You're right. And how does this help? How does this prevent development of new platforms because somebody might have the patent for it?
And no one company right now is in enough of a lead to keep this going. You could kind of say Apple is for the tablets, but I think before Apple loses its share of the tablet market will implode on the realization that there is no tablet market. They're going to realize, well, there's an iPad because people like Apple products. If you're gonna buy one luxury tablet to play with, you may as well buy the prettiest screen with the best software and the slickest animations and the best camera. So you may as well get an iPad if you're going to get a tablet at this point. But beyond that, what do you do with the thing? Is that really replacing a laptop, a thing with a keyboard and mouse? You're going to do video editing on that? I think most of our I think the biggest reason that tablets are picking up steam and smartphones is because people are bored with their existing laptops and desktops. Many people are still on XP or they're still using websites. I was on a website the other day and it occurred to me, this website hasn't changed in over 10 years. And I can't remember ever noticing that before about the web. In the earlier days, everything was happening so fast. We've been in a long period of stagnation. So I think people are picking up things like this and saying, ooh, something shiny and new. And then after they get bored with it, they'll say, well, now what do I do with it?
No, you're absolutely right, Eric. Sunkast, let's go into picks of the week. Okay. So I have to get these guys, the comic guys are here, and they're ready to do their show.
I'll just send them away.
I should, actually.
Nobody likes the comics anyway. They're just...
Nobody likes some. All right. Go. What's your pick?
My pick?
Yes.
I'm going first?
Yes.
All right. So my pick is a application called Driver Identifier. Not everybody has the knowledge to keep up to date on if their drivers are up to date and everything like that. And it can be a chore to go into Device Manager and do all this advanced stuff just to make sure that all your drivers are up to date and all that stuff. But there's this program called Driver Identifier that makes it really easy. It just scans all of the hardware that's connected to your computer, and it has its own database of drivers, and it can provide you with an option to update these drivers, the ones that are outdated. All you do is basically load the program, hit scan. It'll print out a report for you to say whether or not your current hardware has the current drivers and if you need to update it. If you need to update it, it's so easy. All you do is you click on a link that says update. It'll update it. It should do it about 5 minutes. They say that it's really easy to update these drivers. They're trying to make a promise of it won't take you more than 5 minutes to update a driver, which is really cool. This is one of those things where it's good to be able to keep everything hardware-wise on your computer up to date very easily, especially if you're somebody that doesn't like to do a lot of this advanced stuff. It's called Driver Identifier, and it's free. You can get it for Windows XP all the way up to Windows 7, 32-bit and 64-bit. Just go to driveridentifier.com.
Very cool. My pick this week is a piece of software that many people use. I get asked all the time for a free, simple audio editing software and what I recommend, and I always end up recommending Audacity to anybody that is just getting into this and wants something really quick and easy. And if you're on Windows, on the Mac, of course, I say GarageBand, but on Windows, Audacity pretty much gets the job done. They just released their latest version, 2.0. Just came out, I believe, 2 days ago. And
speaking of stagnation,
I know. I believe the latest version does a lot of improvements, especially with noise removal, normalization, on-demand import of WAV and AIFF files. FLAC is now fully supported. So a lot of the things that people have been asking for with this, it's incorporated now in the software. It's on Windows, it's on Mac, it's on Linux. I used Audacity for a long time when I was on Windows when I just started. Now we're using some more heavy-duty stuff, but this really gets the job done for many people, and it works pretty well. And it's Audacity. You get it from sourceforge.net, or what's the website that you pulled it up? I think it was on like betanews.com I got it from.
Yes.
Yeah, SourceForge has it. I mean, it's a free software. You've used it, right, Sunkast?
Yeah.
How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I used it like 10 years ago, and it looked exactly the same.
Exactly the same. And they just released their latest version. It says many UI improvements. I'm just curious on what they've changed. It's always like the same, but it does a job. That's why I'll recommend it this week. Eric, thank you for coming on. Actually, your pick is the iPad, right?
Well, actually, I'll go. I'll carry off of your pick and say that my pick is VLC, because there's an example. Not to diss Source or Audacity, because I've been using other software, so they may be good. I don't know. But VLC is an example of a program that, after so many years of being free and relatively unchanged, they I think came out with, I think it's version 2.0. It's whatever their new one is. The interface, at least for the Mac, has totally changed. Lots of cool features. It's one of the best video playing apps that you can get. It's far outpaced QuickTime Player, both version 10 and 7 now. You can play back at varying speeds. One thing I like to do is, sometimes I like to power through certain news or documentary things at a higher speed. You can play a DVD, like literally off of the DVD, back at 1.5 or 2 or 2.5 up to 3, I think, with still the audio playing, and even with subtitles. So if you're a geek and you like to get into stuff like that, VLC is the app for you. You can do overlays, you can do a playlist, you can probably really run pretty accurately a web streaming network off of the thing. And in the latest update, it has excellent support for Blu-ray files and media that you would rip from such Blu-rays. So it's an excellent companion. Actually, the only companion I would recommend to, I think, my pick of 2 weeks ago, which was Make MKV. So VLC, another open source free software that has just, it's been a model example of what a free software program, how a totally free program can become one of the best tools on your computer.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of VLC. I use VLC on all my machines. And
well, what's great about VLC is that it plays virtually every video format under the sun.
Yeah, I had trouble playing a .rm file. And you're gonna say, why was I downloading a real media file? No, you know what? Spencer, one of his shows from 2001 was on some website that I found, and it was a .rm.
By the way, it has a compressor in it now.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I want to watch TV late at night, I don't want my neighbor banging on the ceiling saying it's too loud, I can turn on the compressor and actually set, like threshold gain. It's a full professional compressor. It doesn't have look-ahead limiting, so it's not totally pro, but it's what stations used, a couple decades ago, and it'll make a big difference on your stuff. You can, level out the volumes. You can do, the equalizer now has a 2-pass equalizer. You can do great deinterlacing with now D-telecine. I mean, it's the geekiest stuff. For every reason that we've been saying that the iPad isn't for geeks, VLC is a program for geeks.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sunkast, and I thank all of you for watching. Remember, if you miss any portion of the show, you could go to our website, guysfromqueens.com, or go to gfqnetwork.com and get it there. You can watch live at gfqlive.tv. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zarian, Erik Lanigan on Twitter, and Sunkast on Twitter. ErikLanigan.com to find out what Eric's been up to. And we'll see you all next week. Oh, no. Actually, Sunkast, your website, Amadeus.
Yes, AMADAIS.com. It's my website that I post videos from YouTube of artists that aren't, mainstream, but they're really cool and they're really great singers. I like to post those kind of people, give them a little bit of a spotlight. That's Amadeus, AMADAIS.com.
Excellent. And we'll see you all next week on Tech News Weekly. Good night, everybody.